Hello? You hear me? Okay, cool. Hey, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming out. Big turnout tonight. We're really excited for the lineup that we have. Mozilla's here to run the whole show and talk about VR and AR on the web, WebXR, and all kinds of wonderful things, what's going to be happening, what's currently happening. And we're really pleased to be running this jointly with CHIVR, the Chicago VR meetup as well. They're here, and I'm going to let them say a few words. But if you haven't already, sign up for the Facebook page. It's just Augmented Reality Chicago, and yours is
CHIVR.
CHIVR.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So on Facebook.
On Facebook.
Yeah. Just.
And we're going to be we're going to be recording this in 3D. We may have somebody coming to stream it live later. But anyway, thanks for coming. CHIVR's going to say a few words.
Yeah, you want to talk about the CHIVR?
Hey guys, this is our first time doing a co-meetup together. I'm really excited about that because my focus for this year was to bring in more content developers and designers into the meetups because, I mean, let's be honest, these are the folks that actually make things happen. You can have a good idea, but without you guys, it's impossible to kind of launch things. So we're really excited to have you guys here. This is wonderful, and yeah, great.
Hey guys, I'm August. I don't know if I know all of you guys yet, but I'll get to know you eventually. Today we've got a good friend of ours, Joseph Hocking, in, and he is an author of this book. Joe, come on out here, dude. We're going to give away a book today. This is a book that our friend Joseph wrote. It's called, it's a book about Unity. So if you want to learn about the Unity and how to make video games, this is the book you want. And the way that you can win this book is if you tweet hashtag ARChicago and/or hashtag CHIVR.
No, and.
And. Gotta do both.
All of them.
You gotta do both.
All three.
And Mozilla Reality. Get all that in one tweet, and take a picture. Tell your friends. Tell your parents about CHIVR and ARCHI and Mozilla and Joseph here. And I'm going to give Joe a little bit to talk about the book. There you go.
Hi, yeah. It's, I wrote a book a few years ago about Unity. It's, long story short, when I was first learning Unity, I, already was a very experienced programmer just with other tools. And so at the time, I was really annoyed that every resource seemed to, about learning Unity was sort of, we'll start by teaching you programming. So I wrote a book that sort of you already know how to program, you just knew Unity, and it was popular enough that, the publisher asked me to do a second edition. That came out a couple weeks ago, and so that's what this book is. That's done.
Nice.
So again, if you tweet with all three of these things somewhere, some point in time, we'll choose randomly whoever wants the book, and we'll give it to you. If you don't want the book, just give it to a friend. All right, here's Pat. Yeah.
All right, thanks a lot. And I also wanted to give just a big thanks to Mozilla for not only doing all the speaking at the event today, but sponsoring the food and the drink in the back. Thank you, Lars, for organizing everything. So big hand up to Lars and if you haven't been following web, AR or VR on the web, Mozilla has been just leading the charge, and they're just doing a fantastic job making it a reality, and it's really exciting to have them here. So our first speaker is, we're going to switch up the lineup a little. No, we're not. Okay. All right. The first speaker is Blair MacIntyre, and he
phones all over the place.
Pretty much. I don't know if it's overstating it, probably the godfather of web AR, but you've been working on it at it for years and years. Okay. Well, anyway, Blair is a professor at Georgia Tech. You're also the principal research scientist at Mozilla. So
Keep talking.
He's going to be, talking about the, we first, probably in, 2009 at Augmented Reality Expo. By the way, who's going to Augmented World Expo this month? Anyone? Anyone? Yeah? All right. We'll see you there. It's the greatest show on earth. We stole that now. Anyway, so Blair's going to be talking about the current and future of AR on the web. So, there you are. And, drum roll.
Pause. No. Still plugged into something. We have no idea where that's coming from, but it's not coming from this.
That is probably coming from the computer under the desk.
Oh, yes, that's not your computer.
Anybody working or?
Brian, are you good? Brian Schrank, you in the building? So, who here has developed any web VR or AR to date? I would expect that from the front. All right, who's experienced web VR on the web?
I'm just going to try
All right, cool.
Anything
Yeah.
that shows up.
Anyone get the new Oculus Go and try WebVR there? All right, cool. I just got one too. It's actually a pretty fun device. What else?
So,
Oh, we got somebody to help.
hey, it was showing some other desktop. And I don't know which source to start.
Augmented reality. Trust your eyes just right.
Oh, apparently I did the right one.
There we go. VR on the web.
I am more. So there's going to be some demos as part of this, which may come a little later. I may or may not have checked some bad code in GitHub. And then it deployed. Anyway, so I just want to give a brief overview of WebXR, what we're doing, what other people are doing. Essentially the setup with Trevor and John are going to talk about, which are actually the good demos. So set up first. So WebXR is sort of a combination of VR and AR. When we say AR, we really mean like AR, right? And regardless of which part of it sort of brings you excited about AR or VR, the thing that I think a lot of us feel and a lot of the industry folks that we deal with feel is that it's the mix, and especially the potential for collaboration across these, that is what's exciting. And one of the motivations for pulling AR and VR together into one API on the web as opposed to separating them into a web AR and web VR is the potential for people to create apps, web apps and whatever that work in both cases. And I'll sort of riff on that in a sec. So we really mean 3D AR when we talk about AR, not like Google Glass or something else where it's just sort of a little bit of heads-up display. If you're not sort of into the history, that's Ivan Sutherland with the first AR display back in the 60s. This is actually a few months older or younger than me, this picture, because I was born in the mid-60s, unfortunately. It's getting older. If you look at a lot of sort of the things people imagine using augmented reality for, they're all mobile, so a lot of what we do on desktops and so on are not that exciting. There's some things like medicine that are going to potentially need custom hardware, and you have to be safe, and you have to make sure everything's real time. But a lot of these other things, like when you look at industrial stuff or car repair and user experiences, when you step back and think about the apps that people are building, the hard part is getting the data from where it is into the display and displaying it, right? All of these new pipe things are in a system somewhere, and that system's probably on the web. So if you start thinking about building things with web-based augmented reality, virtual reality, that whole difficulty of getting stuff from where it is to where it needs to be just disappears, as opposed to, oh my God, I get this into a Unity or an Unreal app. And that carries across to games and casual apps. Some things like big AAA games that are chewing up my data caps on my broadband with my son downloading, multiple 50 gig updates a day. Those things you're not going to necessarily want to use on the web, but a lot of games and entertainment apps are going to be appropriate. And I think the really exciting thing is when you start thinking about collaboration, whether it's distance collaboration like Microsoft did, multiplayer games, combining AR and VR in social environments in interesting ways, using it for education. That's where the web, and that's what excites, I think, all of us, is the idea of the web. Sort of just being able to like do 2D, do 3D, use my iPad, use the desktop. Oh, I need to do a little bit of AR, need a little bit of VR. And then I can flexibly go back and forth, consume it as I want. When we think about AR, it's important to sort of keep in mind that you can only augment what you know about the world, right? And so if you look at the SDKs that Microsoft and Meta and other companies are releasing, they give tons of information to the apps. And this is actually interesting in the context of the web, because when you think about web pages, one of the things that defines them is they try very hard to protect your private information, to not give away your location, to not send out the structure of the world around you to some arbitrary web page that you just happen to get to because you clicked on a link. So that's something that we think about a lot, and that there's going to be a lot of stuff happening. But it also means that there's a big potential for the web and augmented reality to allow you to run applications and feel comfortable not worrying about the fact that, oh, I'm in my house and I'm wandering around, I'm in my place of work, I'm in my business, I'm in a conference room that may have stuff on the walls that I don't want other people to know. Does this app suck in the camera, suck in all this stuff, and send it off somewhere, right? Maybe for not nefarious purposes, but bad results. Also, AR apps are constrained by the real world. If you do VR, which a lot of people have much more experience with, you might teleport around, allow people to do things from different viewpoints. It's hard to teleport in the real world still. It's really hard to control people's viewpoints, right? Robotic arms, that sort of thing may eventually allow us to do that, but for now, we really have to sort of focus on building reactive things. So there is differences between AR and VR, but they are minor. So like the goal is to get to stuff like this, right? So this is a little program running on the web, a few little platonic solids, as we call them graphics, and but that illumination there is being provided by the sun, in the sense that I compute where the sun is and draw shadows based on it. And so that's where we want to go, right? This little sample was something I built in a previous web browser that I did as a professor, but it was a tiny little program. It took a fraction of time to download because all the work was being done internally. Okay, so briefly, WebXR. WebXR, the idea is to let you do AR and VR, but take advantage of the characteristics of the web, where we want something that's open. Anybody can publish, anybody can create, anybody can share without having to deal with gatekeepers, go through app stores. One of the apps we released on iOS took 7 weeks to get approved by Apple, right, for various reasons. That's a little rough, right, if you're trying to meet a deadline or just share something small. Connected, you can bounce from things to things, instant access, all the good stuff that we know and love with the web. And even without thinking about sort of practical issues, there's lots of things that happen on the web that we may want to do in AR and VR that just are never going to be publishable, right? These are sort of just images from examples, political examples. I want to create an AR app that makes a political statement or takes part in sort of, a political movement that the government or the app stores may not want us to publish, right? And it's important to think about that stuff because the future can't be defined by what Apple feels is okay in the App Store. Or maybe you want to build an app. This is a game a student of mine made that taught safe sex through a playful space octopus game. And you're putting a cap on a volcano. I'll leave it. It was aimed at trying to have this playful game that younger, like teenagers might, find amusing and play. There's zero chance we could ever publish that in any app store on any device, right? But there's a reason to get that stuff out there. So WebXR started as WebVR because of all these devices that we know and love. There's other devices coming along for AR, which is one of the things that's driving us to include AR into WebXR. If you haven't used WebVR, it's basically a set of APIs that connect the that wrap up the current 3D rendering in the web. So if you want to do 3D graphics in the web, you use WebGL into a canvas, you display it, wrap that around some prettiness, and it takes care of binding it to the underlying VR system. So if you haven't done WebVR, but you've used the web and you've used VR, you might be sitting there thinking, the web sucks, right? It's like, the web is like, I drag web pages and they're slow and they're jittery and there's like ads and it's totally unresponsive sometimes. WebVR isn't like that. And when you use WebVR on a head mount, it feels just like a native app because it's running at 90 hertz or 140 hertz, wherever the display is. And it really works. So it was successful. And you can get a version of WebVR on right now on virtually every platform, desktop, mobile, and so on. Power of the web is that you can integrate VR and stuff with all the tools you might know if you're a web dev. And there's all kinds of little apps that we're, it's not going to pull down that people have created with A-Frame and other things to create simple little apps based on web tech. And so you can go and explore those and we'll be happy to point you at things. Again, the key is, with all of this stuff, is to leverage the web, do webby-like things, but do it in AR and VR. And we at Mozilla are going to be doing a bunch of things over the coming year to try to make this work better and faster. So, for example, in our Servo experimental web core, we're doing things like experimenting with ways of getting HTML DOM content into 3D effectively, let you interact with it, and so on. If you, again, are sort of thinking, okay, well, web-based 3D isn't going to be very good compared to Unity or Unreal, this is a screen capture on my Mac at home, on my iMac at home, of a WebGL 2-based demo from PlayCanvas that has like lots of beautiful effects and shadows, real-time shadows and depth of field and all this sort of stuff. So you can, the web is not your father's web, or whatever that expression is. Although I probably am your father. I have some stories. So this is where the presentation breaks because I checked in that code. So this is running in a viewer for an app we built that does WebXR. You may have been in the past used your phone for panoramic images. That's fine. And I'm going to see if the stuff came up or my last check-in didn't fix it. I'm going to turn it over to Trevor and let him and the other guys talk while I hack. So at least in the discussion afterwards, if anybody wants, I can show you some demos. Yeah. Oh, that part worked at least. Oh, is the thing it's way down there. That's cool. So actually, this part is working now. So this is little 3JS demo that it's just embedded in this presentation. So this presentation is running a web browser. It's using HTML and so on. And this is just a little demo when I tap on the floor, these little people, they're basically loading up models. As I move away, you can see they're sort of linked into space. And this demo just takes a model and just renders its vertices and these things and collapses them. But it really is running a full-fledged graphics engine if you haven't, again, used the web. And so we can turn on post-processing effects and do bloom and film effects and all that sort of thing. I don't know if the next one's going to work. Let's see. I don't. We can try. And we've been experimenting with a bunch of things. No, that part is the part that's still broken. So I will work on getting the rest of the stuff working. But essentially we're doing full speed, full featured 3D graphics in an iPhone, in a web page, linked to the world around us, and it's pretty cool. Let me help you disassemble for you.
This is not going to match that.
Yours.
No.
Oh, this
Okay. So Blair will be back up, and we'll take questions at the end for all the speakers, since the whole team's here. So the next up is Trevor Smith, and what's your title?
Blair's coworker.
Blair's coworker. That's what it says on his business card.
I think it says research engineer.
Research engineer, yeah. And he's going to be talking about Firefox Reality Browser for standalone VR and AR headsets. So take it away, Trevor.
Okay, that's somewhat legible. I love following Blair because he gives the whole context of everything we're working on. And so ever. So I just have to say, here's my little piece, and then I'm done. So, as Patrick mentioned, I'm working on this thing called Firefox Reality, which is a web browser that runs on standalone AR and VR headsets. So examples of that are like the new Vive Focus, or the Oculus Go, or the Mirage Solo. And so the goal of this project is basically to bring the open web, so the whole thing is open source, and it's designed with the user in mind. So unlike sort of attention economy companies, Mozilla does not make money off of selling your attention. Bringing that, basically that mission into these headsets so that it's a trusted platform for the web in AR and VR. And so we have a team of people who do design for us. And so I want to talk about that design process just a little bit to give you a sense of how we even come up with the ideas of what it means to bring all the things you're used to in browsers and bring it to virtual reality and augmented reality. And so for decades, we've had a long process of 2D design. So the design process looks like something like you make personas, which are the people that you're designing for. You do a lot of research and figure out what their pain points are. You come up with scenarios in their life that you want to help them with. And then you go through the process of figuring out what it would look like for them step by step to use some piece of technology to make their life better. And in 2D, you do that all in things like Photoshop or Illustrator, all these 2D programs that help you do that. When you try to do that in VR or AR, you find out very quickly that things that look great in 2D look terrible in AR and VR. And I see some of my engineers, and so I'm sure they'll agree with me on that front. It's one of these things where 20 years of capability and skill in doing 2D design, it takes a lot of work to unlearn some lessons and then relearn them for this context. And so we are using some of the 2D tools, but this is actually a picture of a tool called Sketchbox. And so what Sketchbox lets the designers do is sort of pull in their data. So they make examples in 2D of the things that they want to do. They pull them into AR and VR in Sketchbox, arrange them, see what works, see what doesn't work. They can do little animations to test out how things move. And then they take those lessons and they talk to the engineers and they figure out what's possible, and they sort of meet in the middle and iterate until they find something that actually works. And so for Firefox Reality, we started out with something like this. So you can see these browser windows. You have a person standing in a virtual space. They have a tool tray in front of them. It's sort of the equivalent of the menu bar that would be at the top of your PC screen. They have a tool tray that serves that purpose. And then they just have browser windows that look exactly like you would expect a browser window to look if you just took it off of your 2D screen and flung it into space. So you have tabs, you have the URL bar, back and forward. You have all the things you're used to in 2D. And this was great. We actually, the engineers, not me, the engineers implemented something that looks a lot like this, and we brought it into VR, into AR headsets, and it didn't feel quite right. Like all of the sort of pieces and parts that we use and we're really used to on the desktop or on the handset don't really make sense in a lot of cases in AR and VR. So we had to unlearn some lessons and sort of learn some new lessons. And so we started iterating. So the designers and the engineers talked, and the designers went back to the drawing board, and started playing around with, well, okay, what if it doesn't have to be locked into a rectangle like it does on 2D browsers? What if we can move things around? What if there's some sort of motion to it that has depth to it that's different than what you would do in a flat browser? And so we started iterating on designs like that. And what if, instead of tabs, you have something that looks more like a carousel? It's basically an infinite line of all of the pages that you have open, and you can sort of flick through using hand gestures or controllers, or you can put it into a grid mode where all of your pages are sort of all up in front of you, and you just sort of pick the one that you want from 2 months ago that you see up in the corner there. These are the kinds of things that the team that I work with, which is really talented designers and engineers, that's the kind of work that they do. And so we are very early in this process. And I wanted to just show you some of the things that we've played around with. So here's where, this is one of the early prototypes. And like I said, it's all open source, so everything we do is up on the web, and you can download builds of this and put it on your headsets today. I will give you a link at the end where you can find those builds. But here it is, it's running in a headset. We have all of the normal things that you expect in a browser. And it's pretty much what you would expect if you just took a 2D browser and put it into a headset. There is a whole set of design work that we're doing right now around keyboards, where this is sort of a prototype. You may have seen kind of similar things where if you're on a television, they give you a virtual keyboard, or on your handset, like a phone, they give you a virtual keyboard. In VR, there's lots of different concerns for that. And so we're playing around with different designs that let you do things like, this is a very simplistic one. It still uses the QWERTY layout. I don't know if you know this, but the QWERTY layout is kind of interesting in that it was originally designed for typewriters to slow down typists so that they wouldn't jam up the typewriter. Because for any of you who are actually old enough to have used typewriters, if you went too fast, if you typed too fast, you would actually jam up the little hammers of the typewriter. And so it always cracks me up when I see QWERTY keyboards in the context of VR, because we are so far from typewriters, and yet we're using the same layout. But and then I have one more video, which is So that's kind of where we are. That's the stuff that's out on the repo right now. The designs I showed you previously are the ones that we're working on right now. But the general idea is that we're trying to make it as simple and as familiar to you that when you land in a web browser, you can trust that it's not selling your data up the river, and that it's the web that you expect. And then, of course, things that we're doing beyond this are things like immersive mode, where you go to a web page and it offers you up an AR or a VR experience, and you can then shift into a fully immersive 3D experience. And so that's our contact information. This URL is where you can download builds. And so I think the builds that are up there right now are for Oculus Go, the Vive Focus, and the Mirage Solo, for the standalone headsets anyway. And yeah, contact us if you have any questions, or if you use it and you have ideas. We're always part of the design process is listening to everybody. And so I'm going to hand it, am I going to hand it over to Blair again? Nope, I'm going to hand it over to John.
Blair's still coding.
John.
Sure. Yeah, I can introduce myself. Just give me 1 second.
By the way, I actually did manage to compile the browser and put it on my Oculus Go if anybody wanted to try it at any point. In fact, I'm going to get my battery so my phone doesn't have use, and I'll grab my Go and people can pass it around. So next up is John, and John, you can go ahead.
Do you want to use the hand mic or?
Yeah. Hi. All right. Hello. My name's John. I work at Mozilla on the mixed reality team, and my job today is to introduce you to our project called Hubs, which is a social application on the web that is built to be a new way to get together online. My goal is to just tell you a little bit about it, and so that hopefully you understand it better than some of our reviewers understood it. The first review that came out said, Mozilla Hubs is a super simple social chat app for robots. And it was almost right. It was like 99% right, but I assure you this is for humans. But most of what I wanted to talk about, Blair already covered about why you want to build a VR or an AR app on the web in the first place. I'm just going to give you things that maybe we haven't covered before. First, I'll give you a little preview. When you enter a hub or a room at Hubs, you embody an avatar in a shared virtual space with other people. You can talk with them. You can wave your hands around if you have 6DoF or 3DoF controllers, and you can play with objects that have network physics. This is the virtual reality case. We've also experimented with doing the same in an augmented reality environment. So I have to pause it here just for a second so that you see that this is indeed augmented reality. The first few frames of this video. Oh, okay, I cannot. I just have to leave it. This is a real space in the real world on a XR viewer, just looking down onto a shared hub space. And this is what it looked like from VR when that person came in with their phone and they were a giant robot. Again, it is for humans, so. So some of our goals are to give people the tools to use this new medium the way they like, and without having to trust any third party. So as Mozilla, we open source our code, and if you're an application developer thinking, I want to build an application where multiple people are going to come in, share their voice, share their head motions, share all this personal data about what they're looking at, for how long, what they're interested in, who their friends are, hopefully you don't have to say, well, Facebook's my only option, or Google's my only option, and well, they tell me they're not doing nefarious things with my data. But if you can't see the source code, then you can't really trust that. So our goal is that if mixed reality is going to be a medium that we're going to use all the time to talk to each other and to communicate, you should use tools that you can trust because they're open source, and you can run them yourselves, you can fork them, and you can change them to do what you want with them. All right, so I'll give you a demo of how this is supposed to work. Here let me first create a hub. I'm going to hubs.mozilla. I go to hubs.mozilla.com. It loads on my mobile phone network. And you're given this splash screen where you're able to choose an environment that you want to go to. And you can name it. This is my AR. Oh. Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. It's my AR Chicago meetup. And I want to maybe go to this one. I hit go, and this has just created a virtual room. It's going to let me choose my avatar and my name. It's normally not this slow on Wi-Fi, but I'm on my mobile network. Just letting you know that. My battery's also hopefully this works. All right, I'm going to skip picking an avatar. Well, I don't want to skip it, but yeah, I couldn't get on the Wi-Fi here. Well, unfortunately, I can't show you choosing an avatar, but the screen asks, the page asks, do you want to enter on this 2D screen, or do you want to enter on another headset? I'm going to enter on the screen. I give permission to use my mic, and whoa, okay, I think I am not online at the moment.
Is there another instance in a different tab?
Yeah, you have another one running.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I do have another one running. All right.
You're in there.
This is the room that I shared out before before this presentation, where I went through the same process, and then I shared the link with my friends, who are sitting here, and now I'm in this virtual space. I can meet them. Here they are. They're throwing these objects around, and maybe you guys can hear them if they speak. Oh, Robert's in the front row with a go on. So
Stand up, Robert.
stand up, Robert. Well, be careful. And stand up.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so this is
We
looking at Robert.
I'm gonna hand you a duck right now.
Jane's gonna hand him a deck. Oh, you put it behind.
I need my cursor. What is going on? I'll hand you another one.
Oh.
I'm just playing around.
All right, so this is the basic idea. You can get together, you can talk to each other, you can fling ducks, and after we break out, then I'll come in. I want to let anyone on their phones or on their computers, if they brought them, or on their headsets, try it out. I have a couple of rooms here just with QR codes, and I'll leave this up on the screen if no one's following me, and you can jump into one of these rooms and play around with it. So that's Hubs. We're excited for you to try it. We're excited for your feedback. If you want to stay in touch with our team and like kind of see how we're progressing, we have we're in the WebVR Slack under the social channel. We have our GitHub up here, and every week, every Friday, we have a get-together at noon with just anyone who wants to jump in to talk about, well, what we've done in the last week, what you guys want to see next. If you're trying to develop a web app and you want to do it with multiple people, and you need a kind of web, like an underlying network infrastructure, we want to talk with you. So, yeah, thank you for your attention.
Okay. I checked working code in. Isn't the web wonderful? Okay. So I just wanted to do a quick few demos to illustrate things. So a few people probably. Is this machine working? Do I have? Yes. Okay. iPhone. Some people probably saw that we're starting to see implementations of WebXR coming out. Google released implementation of WebXR for VR in Chrome Canary, their beta version of Chrome, at Google I/O. We've had an app, the little M down at the bottom in the iOS App Store for a while. And it implements an old version of WebXR that Trevor and I made last fall as a proposal, essentially. But if you want to, it's essentially the same. And if you want to play with it, you can go. We've got a bunch of samples and demos. What I wanted to demo was to give you a sense of where things are and where they're going. So the first version of WebXR that's sort of coming out now in experiments like Google's is essentially WebVR 2.1 or something. It takes WebVR, fixes some issues that people had with them, and gets that out so that we can then start adding AR stuff. So if you've used WebVR, you've kind of seen that. The AR parts that will come out shortly after that will add some stuff like anchors and hit testing. So if you've used ARKit or ARCore, you know that a fundamental difference between doing AR and doing VR or general 3D is that in AR with HoloLens, with ARKit, with ARCore, you are really supposed to attach content to the system-defined anchors, because the world sensing that these platforms do it might detect that there's somebody's beer here, and it's not mine. How sad. And it might detect it and track it, but as you move around, its understanding of the world changes, and so the exact 3D location of this relative to your device may change as it improves its understanding. So you're never supposed to just put something like in 3D. And so that notion is what we refer to as anchors. The idea of hit testing is that as I look around the world, I'll switch sideways. As I look around, I can tap on the screen and it's shooting a ray. I actually have no idea if it's going to detect that screen because ARCHI probably can't detect a video image as a plane. But I'm using, in this case, we're using the underlying platform, ARCHI, which is finding this plane on the ground. And I might, maybe it'll find a plane up here, we'll see. Yeah, well, no, that's still on the ground. And it's shooting a ray out, finding where it is, creating an anchor, attaching it. So each of these cubes is attached to an anchor on the ground. As I move around, they'll change. So that will come out, those two concepts together will come out in WebXR first, combined with the ability to do this sort of video mixed AR, because Google's very anxious to get this out in AR Core, and obviously ARKit is the other sort of major way you can do that. But after that, and so this is where those little people that I showed you before came from. So I can put a ton of these out here. It's totally goofy, but it's just 3D graphics integrated with the system telling us where everything is. Okay. After that, we start getting into more interesting things, and we've been doing a bunch of experiments to do stuff. So if you're watch old videos of AR or are old like me, you probably have seen these kind of black and white markers. There's lots of computer vision libraries out there, including ones in the web, that will detect these and track them. Not very exciting on the surface of it, but the web is getting more powerful in terms of processing. So we're experimenting with how can we use WebAssembly and other things to take native vision code, like OpenCV in this case, compile it, load it into the web. So that box up the top told me that it finally loaded this 3 megabyte WebAssembly file that contains OpenCV. And now I can hopefully detect, actually flip that, detect this marker and track it, okay? So this is like, you might be looking at this going, oh God, that's so slow. It's like an ugly black and white marker. But the coolness of this is that it's actually integrating with the underlying platform. So what was happening there is very slowly, and not worrying about it real time, I was detecting these markers, figuring out where they are in 3D, and then creating an ARKit anchor for it, right? So now I've got this beautiful fast tracking, but I've integrated it with sort of some custom computer vision code that I can't reasonably expect to be an anchor. So this is something that's going to be really essential for the web, because if you think about industrial applications, if you think about medical applications, you can't expect every web platform to support all of the weird computer vision you might need for these applications. Okay, so that's something that will also come out sort of more quickly. And of course, I've got more of them here, so of course I'll put it back here. So we've been experimenting with that. What else do I got here? The other thing that is going to be happening is figuring out ways to expose more of the platform. So stepping back and thinking about the web, you might think, oh, this is great, we can expose all the stuff that's on ARKit, that's on ARCore, that's on HoloLens, that's on all these platforms. But the problem is, the promise of the web is that you can choose the platform, like the piece of hardware, the browser that you like, that you want to use for whatever reason, right? Your business might tell you to use it, you might have personal preferences, and have an expectation that when you go to a web page, it works, right? Which means that the standards have to be implementable by everybody. And the capabilities that you expose have to be things that can be exposed by everybody. If you think about that, then you'd be like, oh, well, the iPhone X has a face tracker, and it's kind of cool, but I can't make face tracking standard because, HoloLens doesn't have a face tracker. It's not even clear what a head mount type thing have. Or ARKit has an image detector, but it may not behave the same as some other buddy. So this question of how we expose platform-specific APIs in a way that makes it possible for people to write cross-platform applications is a hard one, right? Because you don't want to just have people writing web pages that only work in like Chrome. Oh, actually that happens now. It's like the new IE, right? And this is going to have to be solved because we can't have the web be the lowest common denominator. It has to do this. So we've been experimenting with that too. So iOS has an image detector. I took an image of Hubs, actually, the homepage, and I created it. And so when I try to use this image detector, I actually have a new prompt coming up because we're going to have to figure out how do we get reasonable informed permission from users if the platform is doing things that may not even make any sense. Like, how do I describe HoloLens is making a model of the room around you to, like, somebody who's not in this room? Because if you're here, you probably at least understand, like, what these technologies might do. So in this case, I called it world sensing. But I say yes. I look at this image, which actually should be flat for this to hopefully work. If it works, I get a duck because it's all about ducks. So this is using iOS's thing, right? And if I move it, the duck's still there because, again, it's attached to an anchor. It's not attached to the page. iOS doesn't actually do image tracking. It just does detection. I can reset it, which gets rid of the duck, and I find it again, and the duck may come back. Come back, duck. Okay? So this was a little experiment on how we expose that stuff. And the final thing is like a question of, okay, can I maybe do the face tracking? So again, I'm going to do world sensing. I'm going to flip down, flip to the front-facing camera, and have my cool sunglasses. And so I have this. Awesome. I like sunglasses. And so again, this is exposing iOS stuff. And it's actually, the amazing thing to me is that this actually works in real time, right? So this is running in the web page. Every frame, we're sending this mesh in and creating this incredibly creepy image. But it's running at like, I don't know, 60 hertz. And this is being rendered. All this rendering, all the graphics are being done in WebGL inside the web page, being overlaid on the video in the background. Okay? Something else I wanted to show here. Oh, and of course, because of their obsession with ducks, I can turn on the duck head. So all of this stuff is available on our website. The browser itself is open source. You can go play with it. We compile it because it's a pain in the butt to compile things like this yourself. So it's in the App Store. All the source for these samples is there. Our plan is essentially, as WebXR gets a little more mature, Google released a version, but the standard hasn't even been settled, so that'll be changing over the next few months. We're going to convert this app to use the real standard so that all the same things you might load in Chrome, you can load in this. Maybe in a couple of weeks, Apple will announce that they're going to implement WebXR. We all laugh because we know that's not good. I mean, they're not going to, Apple doesn't tend to release standards before they're standardized. So I don't expect that to happen, but we're going to work to keep this working. We may look at maybe we can get this into Firefox, who knows. But this stuff will evolve, and over the course of the next year, you're going to start to see these APIs in all our browsers, all the vendors. You know, this time next year, I would be surprised if this wasn't much more pervasive in the way that WebVR is now.
What's the name of the app in the App Store?
The app in the App Store is the WebXR Viewer. Yes, and you can. There's links. I can provide links. If anybody wants a card, I have some. If you want to get in touch. Okay. Any questions? But we're around here. We can demo and show things.
Who has some questions? I'm sure you do. For anyone on the team. In the back. All right, August, we got it. Here, should I pass the mic around?
I'll just show it.
Yeah. Oh, I should say, before you ask your question, some of the stuff I just showed is not in the App Store yet, but will be in the next week or so, which is why I was hacking.
So I've been playing with Google's version of this WebXR code before, and I'm going to check your stuff out too after this. But you know, I came from a web development background, and then I got into XR when the DK1 came out, and that's when I learned how to use Unity and Unreal and these tools that really help out developers. And then when I was playing with Google's WebXR stuff, I had to dig into 3JS and 3ARJS and the Draco stuff and all this stuff. And it hadn't occurred to me until that point that I've been spoiled by the tools that Unity and Epic have created.
Right.
Do you guys have any plans or ideas about building a tool set where I don't have to fiddle around with 3JS or all the JavaScript frameworks that are out there?
Yes. So we have an ongoing set of experiments in that. So we, we're the people who created A-Frame, for example, and that is still out there and thriving. It's actually what is being used to create hubs. Amazon has created this thing called Sumerian that kind of looks like a web-based Unity. We have a WebVR exporter for Unity. So you can go and create your Unity project for VR, export it, and put it on the web. And we're doing lots of ongoing stuff and trying to do that. I mean, there's a tension between creating these fully featured things and getting other stuff done. But Josh, who is part of our DevRel, he's basically sort of the main DevRel developer relations person for the mixed reality team, is doing a bunch of stuff exploring how to do different things. I don't know if you want to comment on some of this.
I'm playing with lots of different tools. I'm also working on a workshop series. So if like introductory content creation, app creation is interesting to you, then come talk to me after.
And yeah, I think one of the things that's exciting about the web is a lot of these things that I've just mentioned are all open source. And so it means you can both contribute and understand it by looking at it, but there's also a lot of really weird bespoke tools on the web, right? And that's actually what makes the web exciting. Like before I started at Mozilla, when I was sort of starting my leave at Georgia Tech a few years ago, I went and was playing with this environment called Twine. Has anybody heard of Twine? So Twine is a hypertext authoring environment for creating stories, hypertext stories on the web. And so I added A-Frame to it, added some commands to one of the Twine story formats, and now I could create these really kind of lame, but hey, VR stories. And it wasn't like, there wasn't like a avatar animator like in Unity where I could create these beautiful AAA things, but I could do stuff. And I think that's what we're going to see a lot of, is people creating very tailored environments for specific applications. Like we could do WordPress plugins, we could do plugins for Jekyll, we could do all kinds of things to make it easy to create very specific things that don't require learning Unity.
I'd like to hear some more of your thoughts about your intention for how the user base would interact with these things that you're putting out from that, because hearing you talk about this, I have a lot more experience with the Snapchat tools for AR content creation, and especially their like desktop experience for creating that content. It's like he mentioned, where it's a bit more like epic stuff, where it's very like packaged, and that kind of makes sense for Snapchat, because Snapchat is either going to like make the content themselves or like an ad company and then profit off that, or they're hoping that it gets used for like art, because they don't really want like random people selling like their services as making Snapchat content.
Right.
How do you like? So because of that, they have created all their tools and their content creation around the ability to very easily get out like palatable good art.
Right.
So what would you say like for the way that you're going about that strategy stuff you were talking about? Like we can add these features, or we can try and make it a more like integrated environment. Like they're at least they're claiming that their target ideal user base are these like new artists that are interacting with this medium for the first time. What is the like target like maker or creator for WebXR? Is it someone who's going to like dev those bespoke tools and kind of push the medium forward? Is it like end products for consumers?
So I would say, look at the web, right? So it's the same thing. There's going to be, the really exciting thing about WebAR to me is that how many people have an AR application on their phone? How many people use it every day, right? I used to joke that I have like, every AR application is run like 5 times, right? You load it, you run it, you show it to your friend, you show it to another friend, and then you never run it again. And part of the reason is because most of the things we imagine doing with AR are very sort of opportunistic, right? I'm at the IKEA website looking at the Poang chair, and I'm like, I wonder what that would look like in my room. Okay, I'll go download the IKEA app, and it's like 47 megabytes, and it's going to take forever. Or if I could like just click AR, look around, see the Poang chair, and go back to doing what I was doing, that's a fundamentally different way of interacting with stuff, and that's like what we do on the web all the time. And I think so that's where I see the real opportunity is like, it can be hobbyists, it can be students, it can be people creating things, which is exactly how all of the web tools work right now. And there are WYSIWYG design things for doing web stuff. You know, Joss was showing me a custom kind of Electron-based editor for doing, that he's creating for his own WYSIWYG editor for doing his blog, right? As opposed to using WordPress, as opposed to using, I use like a text editor in Jekyll and generate it that way. So the web just, it's varied. So, you know, the problem with Snapchat or the problem with Insert Application X is it runs inside that one app. That app only runs on the places that company wants to bother inventing it. Like I love the Windows Phone UI. I don't know if I was like the only one, but I actually kind of loved it. It was really beautiful and slick, and I love the way it integrated like all the different social stuff. But there's no apps for it, right? If you could make your Snapchat thing in 3JS and put it on your website and then tweet a link out, and now everybody with every device can see it in some way, AR, VR, desktop 3D, that's way different. And so that I think that's what we're trying to do, is enable the community to do the things the web community does. We're not, Lars is the manager of the group, so I keep looking at him, it's like, am I allowed to say this? It's like, you know, and you guys can also interrupt me and give your opinions too, but I think it's the web, so it's going to work like the web.
Yeah, so I guess I always have the question of, you know, with things like this, it's always like, in the future we're going to be able to do this, and it's going to be amazing, and hopefully it'll be this and this and this. And if the future is what this is, that's great, but is there anything that does now today that is not glitchy, that is dependable, that's something that you could actually take to a company, take to a group and be like, this is why you should adopt this today?
Do you want to answer? I mean, I'll give my answer and then I'll let Lars actually give his answer. My thing is no. I mean, honestly, right? I mean, Google has their thing, Chrome Canary, and you're not going to go to Toys R Us, well, they don't exist anymore, go to Gap and say, hey, add this to your website, but by the way, only people have to install Chrome Canary on Safari, on Android to use it. But you could go to the company and say, look, this time next year, it's probably going to be everywhere. Let's work together to get this stood up, right? And figure out the process for how you do it and do experiments. That's the point we're at. And there's enough viewers, like that's why we released the WebXR viewers, people can start playing with it. That's why Google released stuff in Chrome Canary, WebVR is in a lot of places. We can actually just start doing it now.
Do you know how many people downloaded the viewer?
It's in the thousands. We're getting, like, I get the reports from App Annie or something. There's like anywhere from 10 to 30 a day, which is pretty good for like something that isn't like real, so to speak.
I mean, so Blair was pretty focused on the AR piece of it, and just like AR hardware, you know, this is actually one case where the browsers are kind of keeping up with the hardware. I mean, how many of you actually have AR glasses here? Not a couple people probably have HoloLenses, and that's about it. And so this is actually one case where, like, we're pretty much there with the browsers. If you wanted to put something in production today, the place that we're seeing the most is WebVR, in particular for online tours and for exploration of data. Stuff, because it scales from 2D, people can hit your real estate tour, see see the interior of the house, and they can browse through it in the 2D web browser today. And if they have access to a VR headset, they can go ahead and click the button and hop into it. And we're seeing a lot of reliable use of that today. All of the stuff that we're demoing today, of course, we're trying to push the edge, right? We're saying, what's coming in the next version, what should you be excited about, and what should you, as creators, have access to begin prototyping with, so that once this hardware ships, once, I probably have one of the few HTC Vive focuses in the audience, but like once these are everywhere, you know, what will you have already created by the time that's out there? And so, but anyway, the short version, WebVR.
Oh yeah, VR. I forget about that all the time. I'm answering the question because I was the last one standing.
I want to point out a big part of why we do this is responsive design. You know, the same experience should work even if it's not an identical experience. With hubs, I can go there on a couple-year-old phone and it's going to work. I can go there on my desktop that has no VR headset, but I can also go on a full VR headset and have a connected, related experience even though it's not identical.
So, two-part question. So one, I know that the W3C is part of this WebXR consortium. So my first question is, what are you looking at as far as accessibility with the WAI standard? And then two, as an educator, are you doing anything with the analytics education, so like XAPI integration with it, so that you can understand what students are looking at and how they perform in the environment, things of that nature?
Do you want to jump as the standard director?
Is Trevor still here?
No.
Trevor
No.
Oh, that reminds me, he forgot his PowerPoint.
Yeah. So, I mean, a bunch of us are involved in the Immersive Web Consortium community group, which is what's doing WebXR as part of W3C. Accessibility is one of the topics we talk about. It's totally unclear the best way to do accessibility in VR. But the Hubs team, and I don't know if you guys have anything you want to say about it yet. I don't think we've got there yet. But it's something that's being discussed, but there's no solution. So we're not overlooking it. The process point that the WebXR standard is on is we're trying to get sort of an initial version done the next few months, so that us and Google, who's already started, and Microsoft and Samsung and all the other people who are involved can start building prototype implementations. And so that'll be part of the process, right along with, what's the word? Internationalization, thank you, it's been a long day. I keep looking at that beer. So that will happen, but we don't have it. Regarding the education stuff, yes, I'm also a professor, and I've been actually talking, so Georgia Tech has an online master's in computer science that's pretty successful, and so I've been talking to them about, could we use hubs as a way of supporting distributed communities to work together beyond video chat, right, or Slack, which is what is being used now. And the total advantage, like part of the conversation is always, and oh my God, how easy will it be, relatively speaking, to hook it into Blackboard and so on, the existing courseware systems we're using, and do the kind of things we want. We haven't talked about sort of the very fine-grained attention, like what are the students paying attention to, what are they learning, and I think that's kind of a sticky question, right, because that's going to fall under informed consent and FERPA and all of the kinds of things where, if we tell the students, if you put the VR headset on, we're going to track everywhere you look and blah, 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 then the students won't use it. But you can't do it without informed consent. I mean, the thing that's appealing about hubs is that the students will be able to get the advantage of sort of the social, the spatial social experience, which these guys could talk a lot more about because they have a ton of experience if you're interested in it, from both VR and just the desktop. But I'm very excited, personally, extremely excited, as Lars knows, because I keep talking to him about it every week, about the integration piece, right? About the fact that I can use it in classes, I can use it in business, I can integrate it with GitHub, I can integrate it with Slack, and so on, and start using it as a sort of the chat channel. This isn't good.
I'm going to grab one more, and then we should probably.
I appreciated some of the things that you mentioned about that that Mozilla does to sort of prevent malevolent things from happening to us. And you mentioned a few of those things in your talk. But are there any other things that we those of us that are just sort of watching and trying to be conscious and aware of how corporations and evil overlords can use AR and similar technology to manipulate us, control us, whatever. What can we do? What can we be thinking about that we're not thinking about now?
Hey. I mean, so there's multiple sides of this, right? I am very interested, or I've been thinking a lot about the sort of the big one in the room in AR, which is just the firewall between what things can sense and what can, giving users control about what information the web app has about them at all, right? Once the information's out there, it's out there, right? So if you run a HoloLens app on your HoloLens, it gets the space, right? It gets the full map of your house, your business, whatever, because that's what it gives you. It gets cameras. If you run an AR Core app, then the app, AR Kit, it has all this information. There's really, it's between you, Apple, and the company as to what's happening, and you trusting them. We would like to do more at that basic level on the web. Beyond that, I mean, there's going to be, the future headsets are going to have eye tracking. They're going to have other kinds of stuff. And there's, it would be nice if you had a head mount that had eye tracking. If when an app said, I want eye tracking because I want to do sort of interesting interactions that take your gaze into account. I want to be able to do, educational analytics. You as the users would say, no, you can't have that. Either I don't trust you or I don't want to have it or whatever. And then the app will deal. And so that, I think, it's a mindset that I'm interested in, but sort of beyond that, I don't have any great answers.
I was going to say, for general, talking about security and privacy, go to Mozilla.org.
Oh.
Something a lot of you may not realize is that Mozilla has two components. There's Mozilla, the company, which makes the browser, and we're all part of that as one of the research groups. But Mozilla, the company, is wholly owned by Mozilla, the foundation, Mozilla.org, which is a nonprofit who's dedicated to keeping the web open and private and secure. And so we have a lot of initiatives from the .org side about knowing what data is being tracked, how you can protect yourself, how you can inform your family members who probably aren't as tech savvy about password security and two-factor authentication. There's a ton of resources on Mozilla.org about that.
And we're talking to the policy people about what we can do in the AR, VR side as these things roll out.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much to the speakers. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. We're going to do the raffle. I just randomly picked, and they did all three. Is Ryan O'Connor here?
Hey.
Oh, all right. Do you want the book?
Yeah.
All right. Congrats. That's easy. All right. Also, there's still a ton of food and beer in the back. I don't know Brian, when do we get kicked out of here? How long do we have?
Probably at, let's see, so 8 o'clock, I think. We have a long time.
So if you want to stick around and socialize and network, that's fine. We're not going to, we've got another hour in the room if you want. There's beer, there's still food. Elena, you want to say one more thing?
Yeah, I mean, you guys, thank you so much for coming out, and the Mozilla team has been amazing with the innovations and just sharing that with the community. We do like to host an event once a month at various added tech firms, so, as well as you guys. So follow us, tell your friends, and if you guys have a really cool space, or you guys are innovating anything in the AR, VR, project side of things, and you've got a company that would like to host an event like this, it doesn't have to be theater seating, it can just be a space, come talk to me. And we do this for free, and it gives the community ability to really share, the various innovations that Chicago is putting together in that sense. So my name's Elina, and thank you guys for coming out. This is great.
Thanks, everyone.